afternoon. Thank you very much for attending today. Prior warning, my talk was announced as latest state-of-the-art LIDAR stuff. Made an executive decision on the tarmac last night as I was waiting to come into New Jersey that I'm going to talk about probably the question that has dogged me the most for the last couple of months and has shown up in Professor K's website quite often. But to get there, I have to answer the question, what makes for a good LIDAR? How do you measure things in the environment with a LIDAR? So forgive me for those of you who use LIDAR currently. This is fairly basic, but it does lead to the point of the question that I will answer. So let's start with what do we see when we're driving? Typical complex environment is what we see, what a camera sees: city, suburban environment, highway environment, a wide variety of colors, textures, other agents in the scene, 3D objects, elevations, etc. This is what the LIDAR sees typically. A series of readings. In our most complex sensor, it's about 2.5 million of these readings in a second. That'll give you XYZ location in space. Also give you a reflectivity of whatever target it hits. So it's a very precise measurement. Where a camera might estimate what's in the environment, a LIDAR will measure very precisely what's in the environment. And that's what makes LIDAR a very good sensor for self-driving cars. So if we visualize what those numbers look like, you get what we call a point cloud. These are all XYZ points in space. And this is actually 3D data. So everything here is a precise measurement. And the colors are representing reflectivities. So this is just raw data coming from the sensor. And it's almost understandable to the human eye. If you aggregate those points, you get, through a method like SLAM or something like that, you'll create a 3D map. So this is, again, just aggregated LIDAR points, processed a bit. So what our customers do beyond this, and this is kind of leading up to the question, they'll take those points and they'll interpret them through their algorithms. So at one layer, they'll detect an object or identify an object. In this case, bicyclist, another vehicle, a pedestrian. If you take it the next step, if you aggregate over a few frames, then you can determine the velocity and the direction of other agents in the scene. So our data stops at just the raw data, the point cloud, and then beyond that is what the smart folks with the algorithms will process. And now for them to be able to process that appropriately, all of these measurements need to be a pretty good gauge. You need to have the LIDAR needs to be a very capable gauge of all of these measurements, XYZ, location in space, and also the reflectivity. So what is important in LIDAR data? First off, detection. You want to accurately detect, is something out in the environment? Or vice versa, you want to detect if something is not out in the environment. You don't want a false positive, and you don't want a false negative either. The other things we're looking at are distance and direction. You want accuracy and precision in that, so you know exactly where everything is in space. And similarly with reflectivity, you need that accuracy and precision as well. So that leads to the question that I've been asked more than anything in the last few months. What does a LIDAR see in the dark? For example, when a pedestrian is walking across a street, no street lights and dark clothing. So let's just start this video here. This is what the human eye or camera might see. So it's at night, driving down an unlit street, dark clothing. It's about 100 meters away, and you can't see a thing, really, nor can the camera system. Then about 30, 40 meters out, you'll get a little detection of something in the headlights. And that's the first you see it. And since it hasn't been aggregated over several frames, perhaps a pedestrian, perhaps not. But obviously, this is a very dangerous condition for depending on camera. And this is precisely the use case that LIDAR is supposed to address. So this is exactly the same scene as seen by LIDAR. Starting out down the street, pedestrian way off in the distance, already at 110 meters. You get a couple of points, LIDAR points on that pedestrian. And as you continue driving, and remember this is, you're going 10 frames per second, about 40 meters, you've got about 13 points on this object, and as you're aggregating, that means many dozens of points have already hit that object, and your algorithms can probably detect what that was. Again, the LIDAR isn't doing the detection. The LIDAR is simply showing the points in space. And then, of course, 20 meters, probably the minimum distance you need to stop at 40 miles per hour. You have a pretty good representation of a person out there. So I don't mean to imply anything about what happened on that awful night in Arizona, but to be able to do this appropriately, you need a LIDAR that is showing you no false negatives and no false positives, because that will stop the car from moving at all. And you need to know very precisely in space where that is. Interestingly, counterintuitively, the colors represent the reflectivity, and the person was wearing dark clothing, but you can see this person lights up a LIDAR very brightly, because dark clothing doesn't necessarily translate to low reflectivity. So very clearly, with something like this, LIDAR is a very good tool for that. In the absence of any kind of NTSB data, which hopefully will be coming out at some point, I think this is probably as good a representation as what you can probably get. So now to the reputed topic of today's meeting. I talked about state of the art. So here's the shameless plug part. Velodyne, this is the family of sensors we've had. You've seen these. This is probably still the most ubiquitous sensor on self-driving cars out there. The big rotating, as they call it, the KFC bucket. And as we've moved down, we've grown to smaller size. This is the latest sensor we have, VLS 128. I'll show you a quick video of what that's about. And that's one we actually are going to have a demonstration on at 5 p.m. right outside these doors in the parking lot. My colleague Vidya will, if you want to take a look at what that sensor can see at range with very high resolution, she'll be happy to do that demonstration for you at 5 o'clock in the demo time. And this is just a quick video of what the sensor will see. So you can see we're getting closer and closer to video resolution, but all of this is meaningless if you don't have accuracy, precision, and no false positives or false negatives in the scene. And that's all I've got for today. Thank you very much.
Some false positives and some false negatives, and at some point you have a threshold someplace that says disregard this or not disregard this, or
right.
You or good.
Yeah, that happens at 2 levels. So that happens within the sensor firmware itself, you know, where you got the raw waveform data. You're rejecting points that might be spurious or that aren't positive. Or
so how are you improving that piece of it coming from the waveform? Are you getting better with that, or?
Absolutely. I mean, necessarily to go out 200, and this sensor you're going to see today is actually a 300-meter sensor. You have to get a lot better at that. Also, manufacturing, the things we're moving forward are better alignment. Still, the best type of LIDAR sensing out there are multi-channel rotating sensors. So all of the commercial ones you see out there today for self-driving cars pretty much do that. But the alignment of those lasers and detectors, the manufacturing consistency, all of that stuff plays very importantly into it.
Good. Alberto, here it comes. While you're setting up, we'll take one more question. Cost. How many are you buying?
Sales job. Yeah, it all depends on numbers, and it's all quite scalable. There's nothing in that bag of electronics that's prohibitively expensive. Typical silicon architecture.
Coming down.
Way down. Yeah. This one out on our car is 100 grand, but.
What?
But it's an R&D sensor in very limited numbers. But if you buy 1 million of them, it's below $1,000.
Fred, reach into that pocket of yours. One more question while Alberto's. Nobody. Yes.
You mentioned about the visualization of reflectivity. What did the colors mean? Like red or reflective?
Right, in that visualization, red was highly reflective. So if you see a street sign, it will come out red, or red reflectors on the road.
And then was blue less reflective?
Oh yeah, very, very absorbed by the